What's going on YouTube? Cloverbells here, back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be talking about some underrated Pokemon within the Regulation format, right? Regulation D format. These are Pokemon that, you know, they're not going to be like super meta breaking, and you know, they have some drawbacks, of course, but they have what we call that niche role that we very much appreciate and desire on our teams, just because they can really mess up your opponents, just because they don't really have enough preparation against them, because you know these are not like super common options, right? That being said, there's still like pretty good options to consider just because of the amount of potential that they can offer and the amount of upside. And you know, as the format continues to evolve and progress, and more checks are being desired for some of the more common A and S tier options. You know, when you're trying to build for these upcoming tours, especially leading up to the World Championships, you know, with enough exploration, these are options that can do relatively well on your team if they're on the right team. Okay, I want to stress that, because you know, these are not like S tier super splashable options that can be put on like a whole bunch of different teams. These are like relatively, you know, niche mons that can still do the job that they need to do, you know, depending on what exactly do you want on your team. Okay, so with that being said, let's go through our list. And I just picked about 5. You know, I feel like there's more than 5, but you know, with enough exploration. But these are like 5 of the ones that like I think are at the top of the list at the moment. Okay, so let's get to it with our first option here. Okay, so with option number 1, I feel like I have to start with this one. We have to start with Volcarona here. Like, dude, this mon is actually, you know, relative kind of crazy, man. If you just consider, you know, some of the top meta threats and what it can do. That being said, there are also some meta threats that can kind of wall it, which we'll get into in a second. But just consider the concept of Volcarona, right? You know, you have a Quiver Dancer Pokemon that can set up, right? So that's always, you know, relatively cool. You know, with +1 special attack, +1 speed, and then special defense, you know, you can wall a lot of different things, especially like Flutter Mane, for example. Like fire typing against Flutter Mane is very good just because you can wall Moonblast, right? And then in general, you know, your special defense is relatively high. So now even Shadow Balls just aren't really ticking for all that much. And now at the same time, you have to consider what else can Volcarona give me besides like, you know, a special attacking setup on, because I can find that anywhere. So now you have to consider this where like you look at its ability Flame Body, where you have a chance you know, on contact to burn the opponent, right? And I just think back to like Sword and Shield Series 10 or Spike Month Cup, whatever, you know, that kind of format where non-Dynamax was relevant. And Volcarona did really, really well on these kinds of teams just because, you know, you can make them relatively bulky, and then you can slap on either like a Rocky Helmet for like good chip damage, or you can slap on a Citrus Berry, you know, to the point where like Urshifu Surging Strikes is just not going to KO. You know, because of after the second Surging Strikes, you're just going to recover past the breaking point, and then after the third Surging Strikes, you're still alive, right? And that gives you 3 chances to potentially burn the Urshifu and, you know, not make it, you know, hit Hazard, you know, for the rest of the game. So that being said, you know, it really just depends whether you want like Berry, Rocky Helmet, even like Safety Goggles is pretty good, just because you can get around Amoonguss. You know, that's also a pretty cool idea, you know, all things considered. But you know, in terms of like a moveset, you know, some fire type move, like maybe Flamethrower or Fiery Dance, for example, you can do that. Then you can do like, what's that? Bug Buzz, okay? And then Giga Drain, like Terra Grass, Giga Drain. Now, of course, maybe you might want to give up one of these moves for like Protect, for example, but like Terra Grass, Volcarona actually does relatively well. And again, with Rocky Helmet, if you make this bulky, like I said, the Urshifu can kind of get punished, but also Dragonite and Chien-Pao can kind of get punished as well. Especially like Chien-Pao, your fire typing is really good against, you know, it's Ice type attack, same thing with like the fighting moves. And then Dragonite, you know, it also has a chance to get burned, you know, because of the extreme speed physical contact. Now, that being said, Volcarona's physical defense isn't all that great, which is why you're going to make this relatively bulky. But just in terms of like the concept of it, it can do relatively well. And believe it or not, if you look at Victory Road, there was a top 32 Volcarona on that team. I believe it was Oliver. No, not Oliver. That's not his name. Let me wait for this to load. Oh yeah, no, it was Oliver. Yeah, so like take a look at Oliver's team here. So like Oliver, right? He was saying, look, I'm gonna do Leftovers, Terra Grass, Quiver Dance, Heat Wave, Protect, Struggle Bug. Okay, so yeah, again, he has Protect on this, like I said. So, you know, the idea of like, look, Volcarona, Landorus, Iron Hands, Flutter Mane, and Amoonguss like this is actually a pretty good core here. And you got a good speed control here from the Tornadus, so now, you know, everything here is relatively fast. But, you know, if you could just do Among Us Volcarona plays where, like, you redirect and then you set up Quiver Dance, now you're just outspeeding everything, right? And also, like, just the fact that you can slap on, like, Among Us and even Gastrodon. Oh my god, Gastrodon? Dude, like, this is, like, another underrated Fire, Water, Grass core that you can consider running. Like, it is a bit passive, right? And we'll talk about drawbacks in a second, but, like, the idea of Volcarona and Gastrodon, like, within the same team is actually kind of funny. Because, you know, Urshifu can't really do much here. And then you can just do, like, Yawn Pressure, Ice Beam, you know, Earth Power. Volcarona can kind of just chill here and just set up, you know, Quiver Dances, you know, when you're forced to switch out of Yawn, for example. But, you know, just, like, the concept of it is really cool. In terms of, like, EV spreads, you know, there's a few that you could do. You could do this one, the very general one. Where you can hit the benchmark here at Modest Nature 36 investment, hit an even number in special defense. And then what you could do, there's a couple of speed tiers that you could do. You could do this one where, like, you go for 138 investment or just speed creep to 140, you know, and that'll outspeed Timid Flutter, right? If I just do, like, some quick math here, 140 times 1.5. Yeah, okay, yeah. So yeah, you're pretty much chilling there. You actually just need about 138 to outspeed Timid Flutter, you know, after a Quiver Dance boost, but then you can just speed creep and go to 140. And then this also outspeeds Regieleki, you know, under Tailwind or after +2 for what it's worth. But you could do that, and then from there, just max out the HP and then just dump the rest in physical defense, right? So that's the idea with this Volcarona, and I think this is like the top spread in like Pikalytics or something like that. Or what you could do is, you know, put more bulk on this and just drop this to like right around here, maybe about 125 to 126. Right, so then that outspeeds Modest Flutter Mane with a +1 boost, right? So if you just do 125 times 1.5, yeah, 180%, right? So you can just outspeed with 126 after a +1 boost, and then now you have 112 EVs left to play with. You can just put this into more defensive bulk like this, right? So to better take some of those physical attacks. That's another thing you can do. Or another point is that you can just straight up just go bold Volcarona, right? That was a thing, you know, done in Spike Month and even like Series 10 Sword and Shield, and just, you know, improve your physical defenses overall anyway. But this is a very, you know, bulky Volcarona set. But, you know, for the sake of the video, you know, I won't get too much involved in the EV spreads, but I'm just showing you like a couple of examples here. All right, and then if you just go through like the regulation tier list, right? Let's go through like the top, you know, 15 options here. So like Flutter Mane, right? You can wall this, you know, after a QD, you can outspeed it. Urshifu Rapid Strike, we already discussed what it can do. Terra Grass, you know, can pretty much just wall this thing. Tornadus is the one thing that you have to be aware of, whether you're bug or grass typing. You're going to be weak to the, you know, the flying type moves, so just be aware of that. But again, you know, after a Quiver Dance boost, you know, Bleak Wind Storm is just not really doing that much damage anyway. So yeah, and by the way, Urshifu, you can just pretty much, again, like Giga Drain it if you outspeed it, and then you're just getting like so much recovery out of it, and you pin that slot. All right. Then Among Us, like we said, we can get around it. We're a fire type Chenpao. We wall it. Heatran walls you. All right. Yes, that one you have to be aware of. But if it does go Terra Grass, then your bug moves is looking pretty good there. But the Heatran can be a little bit difficult for Volcarona, so that's another one. Landorus, Rocky Helmet, or, you know, the Flame Body can help you do something. Terra Grass, you know, again, more or less force a Terra against it, but Landorus can be a little bit tricky. Cresselia, you're fine against. You can do well there. Rillaboom, especially, you can do very well against. You know, this Rillaboom can't do anything. We mentioned Dragonite. Okay, Ursaluna, again, kind of like you have to do the Terra Grass, Giga Drain it, resist the ground moves. Facade is just pretty much just gonna smash you, right? Unless you have like maybe an Intimidator on your team or like screens. Iron Hands you can do okay, especially. And then these are just like, okay, Goldango Red, like, yeah, okay. But like, look at how many of the options it did relatively well against, okay? So, again, I should definitely think you should consider Volcarona in some of these teams. Like, it just finds a way to sneak into every single format, right? I feel like Regulation A was like pretty good for it. And then from there, B and C, it's like some spotty appearances here and there. But like Regulation D, you know, I feel like it's much better than it was in Regulation C and should be at least considered in some of these teams, right? And it has a few results already. Again, then one notable one in Victory Road. So Volcarona is not a bad Pokemon by any means. Has a niche role. So if you're willing to explore it, it can do relatively well. And just to show you another team here, this is from Gardevoir. He used this on in another tour. And again, look at this: Gastrodon, Amoonguss, and Volcarona. This is another team that again utilized it relatively well. So here it is. Like this is there's the bulk there. There's the bump. Fire Dance, Bug Buzz, Giga Drain, Quiver Dance. Gastrodon is here. Terra Poison, Amoonguss. So good Fire, Water, Grass core. Relatively bulky. Landorus Intimidate support, so that's good. That'll help Volcarona a lot. And then, of course, you have a strong special attacker in Fluttermane. And then Iron Hands, just with Fake Out Pressure, able to help you position in certain scenarios, right? Iron Hands, Volcarona, you could just literally lead like Fake Out plus Quiver Dance, and that'll help you set up relatively fine. Amoonguss really helps you against Dragonite, Chien-Pao for sure. And Terra Water is a nice option here in certain scenarios. So yeah, again, I just showed you a couple of Volcarona squads. So again, really good underrated option right now in Regulation D. All right, next up is something that we've already discussed in like a separate video, but I want to stress again, Gastrodon. So like the obvious thing with Gastrodon is of course Storm Drain, where you're just able to absorb water type attack and then just go to like +1, and you can pretty much sit in front of an Urshifu and then just kind of just chill there, right? So but that's not the only thing that Gastrodon can kind of give you, right? So Gastrodon also gets coverage for like Ice Beam. You could do Earth Power. You get sustainability with Recover, right? And then this probably something has some like leftovers, and then you could run Protect here, or you can run like Yawn, right? I really like Yawn because Yawn just forces opponents to reposition in situations where they just don't want to do it, right? So it forces a switch. You could just protect the turn that they maybe want to take a chance, and then they just go to sleep, right? So, or on the flip side, they don't want to take that chance at all, and then they switch, and then you can punish whatever comes in, right? And then just force the opponent in an awkward position, right? But not only can you like sit in front of the Urshifu, just in terms of like an EV spread, you can make this relatively bulky, and then just sit on the field and just spam Yawn, and there's not a whole lot the opponent can really do unless they have like a Rillaboom, for example. But in terms of like a spread, just a very quick one that I found that's pretty cool. You can just go to like the first bump here in Calm Nature, right? So special defense boost, and then just optimize your leftovers recovery by just going to 172 investment. 208 will give you perfect 12 recovery, with the leftovers. And then by maxing out your defense like this, what it actually does in terms of a calc, in terms of a Chien-Pao over here, like a Jolly Chien-Pao, right? Max 252. It makes Ice Spinner a 3-hit KO. Imagine that, Ice Spinner Chien-Pao 3-hit KO. Okay, with max defense investment with 172 HP, right? So that was like a very standard spread anyway from Gastrodon back in like Series 10 / Spikemuth. But then over here, you just have 24 EVs. This is just like leftover. You can do whatever you want here. You could just do this, and that's pretty much it. Or maybe just this, and then dump the rest in speed like that. But you already achieved the calc that you want, and this is a very, very classic example of a bulky Gastrodon set over here. But, Ice Beam, really good into the Genies, really good into Dragonite, of course, forces it to Terra. Earth Power, great against Heatran, forces it to Terra into either Terra Bug, Terra Grass, which you can always just Ice Beam against. And then just the other fire types in general, Earth Power, Pressure, just like Ground Ice is really good coverage, right? And then sustainability with Recover, and then Yawn, Pressure for sleep status and forcing repositioning, just makes Gastrodon a very good Pokemon. It's always been a good Pokemon. Now the catch is, of course, it's a little bit passive, doesn't really do that much damage, but that's not really what it's supposed to do on your team, right? You're supposed to have other heavy hitters to do the job. But again, if you just go down this list, as far as like how well Gastrodon could do. So, all right, so we already mentioned the Urshifu, then the Tornadus, we got Ice Beam, Pressure. Torn can't really do a whole lot there. Amoonguss, so that's something that you have to maybe consider, like maybe Terra Grass, for example. Then you can just like Ice Beam this. Chien-Pao, like we said, we can kind of sit in front of for at least 3 turns and then just keep clicking Earth Power spam. The Heatran, we mentioned. Landorus, of course, doesn't want to be taking an Ice Beam. Crest, that's a neutral matchup. Rillaboom, that's the one you have to be afraid of course. Dragonite and Ursaluna, Another, two Pokemon that you can do relatively well against, because you are so physically bulky. The Iron Hands, great immunity against, its electric attacks. And Iron Hands is like, through the roof right now in terms of usage. So to have, Earth Power Pressure against it is actually really, really nice, especially because it's a special attack, rather than a physical attack. Goldengo, Aleki, these are, Chiyu, these are all very ground weak, okay? Ground immunity is very important right now in VGC, and the fact that a lot of these mons are weak to ground type attacks just stresses how well it does, right? Thunderous, another one, drops to that. Iron Bundle, freeze dry pressure, of course. Then there's the there's the Gudra, where like, again, Gudra is going for like these shelter defense boosts. You can just earth power that, and even though it is very specially defensively bulky, it's still a stab super effective move, right? So that being said, it can just recover, but at least you can still pressure it a little bit, and then just go from there. All right, but again, Gastrodon does relatively well against a lot of different things, but can get pressured, by other, standard S tier mons, of course, but it has that niche against Urshifu, which is the main one, and then specific niches against some of these options like we mentioned already, right? So do with it what you will. Gastrodon, still a very, very good Pokemon, just needs to be on the right team. Next up, I want to reiterate Zapdos here. So we did build a team around it, and it's one of our rentals. And Zapdos, I feel like, is a very, very good check to a lot of different things running around. More specifically, like Urshifu, Rillaboom, Amoonguss. These are all Pokemon that, Zapdos can do relatively well against, right? Especially if you have, like, either safety goggles or the Rocky Helmet, against some of these things. I feel like these are two very good items right now in Regulation D. I might want to do like a video on those two items, but do I really need to? We know what they do. So static is very good, all right? Just like Volcarona, where you can inflict status when you make physical contact, you can inflict paralysis, which can honestly win you the game in certain scenarios, right? So the opponent has to be careful in terms of clicking its moves. Now, just like in non-Dynamax formats and like Spike, but Zapdos was made to be a bulky set, just like Volcarona in essence. So very standard spread here that I'll just give you. It's just going to be something like this, where you're hitting the bump, just like Volcarona, 36 investment, and not a whole lot of special defense, just about this much in speed. You only need this much to outspeed the Flutter Mane, of course, after a +1. But again, we do have Tailwind on our Zapdos, so that's something else you can also consider, but maybe you can just speed creep and go to like 128, something like this. But the main defensive calc here is this, where you just max HP and then just a little bit in defense. And what this allows you to do is survive the Chanpao Ice Spinner. And I believe I have that calc right here over here. Yep, I do. And you can actually guarantee this if you just drop the HP just a little bit and put a little bit more in defense like this. So I'll just go ahead and show you that. But yeah, you can guarantee the Ice Spinner, and you're, of course, going to also survive Dragonite E-Speed with the Chanpao on the field. So that's also a good thing that you can do with Zapdos. But in terms of like pressuring the Urshifu and other things, you do have Thunderbolt. Special attacking electric move is very rare in this format. The only time you pretty much ever seen it is like maybe Flutter Mane Thunderbolt. Regieleki still isn't used a lot yet. That might creep up a little bit later, but right now, there's not a lot of it. And then you have like Hurricane, which with Tornadus teams is actually pretty good, because Rain Dance can help it be 100% accurate. And then you have, again, sustainability, Roost, right? A lot of these Pokemon like Gastrodon or Volcarona, you have some sort of healing move, okay? And anytime you can do that, that just means you're able to stay on the field longer and inflict damage. And then if the opponent doesn't have sustainability, you're gonna win that endgame, okay? So that being said, again, just with Zapdos, the thing is, like, Iron Hands is the dominant electric type at the moment, just because it can do a little bit more than what Zapdos can offer. Like, Iron Hands is bulky, it's got Fake Out. Zapdos doesn't have the same amount of bulk that Iron Hands does, but it gives your team speed control, okay? Which is one thing, okay? It's a special attacker, so it doesn't get intimidated like Iron Hands. You have ground immunity, which we just discussed is very prevalent and very important in this kind of format, right? Because a lot of things are weak to ground types, right? So, having that ground immunity is good. And then a good strong flying type attack, that's a special attacking one, is also really good, right? And if you can just go down the list, Urshifu, Tornadus, Amoonguss, Chanpao, you have to be careful. This is why like Terra Steel is important on Zapdos, just to be able to like deal with that. and just being able to resist it. And then from here, we mentioned Heatran. You can't click Earth Power against Zapdos. The Heat Wave is pretty much all it's got. But your electric and flying type attacks don't relatively do well against Heatran unless it terrestrializes. Landorus, funny enough, you can't really hit Landorus well, but Landorus can't really hit you well unless it has like a rock move, but that's why you have terrestrialization. We mentioned Rillaboom. We also mentioned Dragonite a little bit. Ursaluna is pretty much just forced to click Facade. So, yep, I guess there's that. Iron Hands, like I said. Goldango, Aleki, yeah. Again, these are all like Pokemon where like, oh, okay, these are maybe like neutral matchups. Iron Bundle you can do well against. Hisui and Gudra. The body press and heavy slam is not going to do well against you. You can still like click electric moves, so it's like interesting just because it can resist it, but you can also resist it as well, right? So it's a little bit interesting with Zapdos. I like it. I've been able to have good success with it, and it has again that niche role against some of these other physical options. If you need that role fulfilled, Zapdos can do that for you, just like Volcarona. But if you already got a fire type, Zapdos could be your player, right? Especially if you need speed control on your team, which is the main niche that Zapdos can do. Whereas the other two that we already discussed don't really give you that, okay? Okay, next up, I want to look at Toxicroak, man. So, like, Toxicroak is actually very interesting. And, overall, I think this is, like, maybe the worst of the bunch. But, ironically enough, it has a winning result. So, I guess we have to, like, kind of discuss it a little bit. To me, it's still kind of like, all right, kind of meh. But in terms of like a cool mon, it definitely fulfills that niche. So if you look at Dry Skin ability, right, this is the main selling point of Toxicroak, okay? Because if you look at its stats, it's not like super great. This attack is just like, barely at a little bit above average, but it's okay. But in terms of the ability, the selling point is you're healed when you are hit by a water move, right? Dry Skin. So Urshifu, again, just like Gastrodon has a way to deal with it. You get healed by it, so now it's kind of like just forced to like click a fighting move, which you can do pretty well against. And then from there, you're healed in rain, you're hurt in the sun, which is the idea behind Dry Skin. But in terms of like a moveset pool it can do, again, you get access to Fake Out. So anytime you have Fake Out, you have some use in VGC, I would always say, right? Anytime you have that. Then from there, just imagine some of these like key attack moves that it can get. First of all, its stat move Poison Jab, great into something like Rillaboom, great into like the Terra Grass things, like even like Terra Grass Heatran, pretty good into fairies, right, that want to go Terra Fairy, especially like Curselia Terra Fairy or just like Terra Fairy Flutter Mane. And if Flutter Mane doesn't Terra, then you have access to Bullet Punch, which is actually a pretty good move. You're forced to pretty much just go Adamant to try and pick up that KO, but yeah. Then from there, close combat, your fighting move is also relatively fine. If anything, you can give up maybe even the Fake Out and just go like Protect here. But typical set here, it does have the Assault Vest. That was on the winning team. So you could just pretty much do something like this where you just go 204 speed. This will outspeed max speed Modest Heatran because max speed Heatran hits 129, I believe. So you can just speed creep. Then you just hit the bump, the benchmark here, the third bump here with 188 investment. And then from here, you just have like the rest into your bulk. So you can just do like 1 point here in special defense to get an even number to optimize your assault vest, and just 1 point in defense, and the rest just dumped into HP, right? Very, very quick general Toxicroak spread here. But in terms of like where we found it on the winning team, let's take a look at that tournament first. So this was the Nemi Tour, Regulation D, number 34. The first place team, just to show you, was played by Legacy. It's a really cool rain team with Toxicroak, you would imagine. And it does have Goldango, Amoonguss, and Iron Hand. So very, very strong core. And just really good in terms of like what the Toxicroak is supposed to do. It's a very smart idea to use it like this. But again, here's the Poison Jab, Fake Out, Bullet Punch. There's the set that we talked about. Terra Steel, that makes a lot of sense in terms of the weakness that it does have. So Steel's pretty good here, but just the rest of the team, pretty standard. This is your sweeper, and I'm surprised to also see Gastrodon here. Storm Drain and Toxicroak. That, I guess what ends up happening is like, I'm just trying to figure out like where is the, here's the gimmick. You're right, it's Surf Pelipper. Okay, so now I kind of get it. You know, cool. I think it's a really smart idea. It's a smart team, but just in terms of like this move coverage and the assault vest, if you just go down the list, it has pretty good coverage into, you know, a lot of the most of the meta options, right? You have bullet punch against Fluttermane, you have an assault vest to deal with it, you wall the Urshifu, the Tornadus, Terra Steel helps you against the you know, the flying weakness. Amoonguss is something you're gonna have to just, you know, be ready for, of course. Chenpao, again, you have the steel move there. Heatran, you have the fighting move, of course. Landorus is something you have to be aware of. You know, again, just Cresselia, Terra Fairy, if it does, you have something for it. Other than that, yeah, good luck with that one. Rillaboom, you do relatively okay with, right? You know, especially like Rillaboom does pretty well into some of these rain teams. So, you know, anytime you can have something for it is very much appreciated. Dragonite, you know, just really depends. You have the move, but can you go first and KO it? Ursaluna, Iron Hands, Goldango, Aleki, and then Chiyu. These are like kind of like matchups just because, you know, you do have an Assault Vest, of course, but is that enough against some of these options? I'm not really sure, which is why like I look at it, it's like, yeah, it's a kind of very niche option, but it's pretty cool to use. It's something different, and it's like, oh my god, Toxicroak, what are you doing here? It's a nice little check to Urshifu amongst a few other things, right? But it's nice to actually see it, and it did have a result, so, you know, I can't really knock it, which is also why I'm representing it here. But if you want to use Toxicroak, you're pretty much just forced to always play with Pelipper. I feel like that's the main use for it. I don't really see it being used outside of rain, just because Dry Skin really does well under rain, not just as an Urshifu check. You get passive healing at the end of the day. All right, let's do one more here for the video. So Landorus-Incarnate, bro, like this Landorus, right? The special attacking one, dude, sheer force life orb, man. It just does so much damage, even against stuff that resists some of its moves. Like sheer force life orb is crazy. It hits so hard, and it does relatively well against some of the like hyper offensive stuff. So, you know, the fact that also you can have 101 speed tier to outspeed Urshifu is actually huge. So like Psychic against Urshifu, I don't care how bulky you are not surviving this, okay? It's just really strong in terms of the power of sheer force and life orb with it. Very good. You know, 101 speed tier, like I mentioned. You can also outspeed Chiyu, so goodbye Chiyu. Here's the earth power, thanks for coming. And then, you know, if you want, you can also do like Sludge Bomb and then Protect. You know, 3 attack moves, really good. Again, just like the previous Pokemon that we did, Sludge Bomb is also very good against some of these fairy types, these fairy options. Also great against Rillaboom, might I add. And then Amoonguss, you also snipe Amoonguss with Psychic. Amoonguss does not want to be taking sheer force life orb Psychic, okay? Let me just tell you that right now. It's very good. And then just Protect here, just a very standard set. And really, your EV spread is, you can make it relatively simple. I don't think there's any real need to like make it super bulky, but just in terms of like, here, just go like Timid here, you know, just outspeed the Chiyu and then just put everything in special attack. That's really all you need. You don't care about the life orb chip, you know what I mean? You don't even take it anyway. But, you know, you can also use it as like a substitute Pokemon, right? Because you can use Sub and then just potentially stall out some Trick Room turns. So maybe give up one of these moves. You know, maybe just Sludge Bomb, just put like substitute here and then just spam your sheer force moves behind the sub, and it hits too hard. So I like it a lot. I feel like it's really underrated at the moment. You know, like we mentioned, like Fluttermane does not want to be taking these moves, especially if it's Terra Fairy. Urshifu, we can outspeed it. Tornadus, you know, again, we can just click Psychic on it or some other move against it. Really strong. Amoonguss gets sniped. Chenpao is the one that maybe we just have to worry about, but again, we do have the option for like, you know, Terra Poison, Terra Steel for that. Rillaboom, like we said, really good against Iron Hands, Goldango, Aleki, Chia. These all drop, okay? The Rillaboom, Sludge Bomb, like we said. Yeah, and then just from overall against some of these other stuff like Basculegion, we can remove Torkoal, we can remove Regidrago. You know, we're kind of just chilling there, especially if we have our own speed control. You know, as long as we can outspeed these threats, you know, Landorus Eye just kind of goes ham here. There's no Ting Lu, right, in the format right now, so Landorus Eye is kind of like we're running around like crazy, doing all kinds of damage. All right, Pelipper you can do well again, especially after like Sandseer Storm. That's also really nice. Armor into the Armor kind of like gets dropped here, especially if you can just sub in front of it, click Earth Power. Yeah, I really like it a lot. And just imagine like a very standard Series 10 team from Sword and Shield. This is a paste sent to me by one of my friends, Rekina Kabunger. You know, this is what they're using at the moment with Landorus-I. I like this set, you know, especially with like Zapdos. There's the Volcarona again, and then here's the Rillaboom Ursh. So like really nice Fire, Water, Grass core here. Here's the Flutter Mane. There's the Zapdos with the Tailwind support. Like, dude, honestly, this looks like a Series 10 Sword and Shield team with just a Flutter Mane slapped on it. So I like it a lot. It's a really cool mon. I feel like on the right team, again, it can be used relatively well. And if we look at Victory Road over here, I feel like, and also like our former coach, Joe, right, one of our good friends, Mr. Ugarte, you know, another fellow Joe, fellow New Yorker. Here's that Landorus-I set. What's he running on this one? Earthpower, so there's the substitute set, right? So, you know, similar idea to what Rekina was using, you know, with Urshifu, Rillaboom, and Flutter Mane. Then here's the Aleki Heatran. I feel like Aleki could be really good. Oh, this is a Sash Aleki. That's also really nice. So 2 substitute mons. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense on a team like this. You kind of need it. Sometimes one is just not enough and reliable. But overall, again, another very good Pokemon that, again, when put on the right team, can do relatively well. So if you want to explore Landorus-I, definitely consider it. We even built one previously. If you take a look on the channel, go back a little bit, we built a whole team around Landorus-I. But yeah, it's a really cool mod. But again, that's my list. There's our 5. So let me know what you think. If you think there's other options, feel free to comment below. But again, I just wanted to make this about like underrated niche Pokemon that, you know, could make a huge impact, you know, against the opponent's team, you know, that are like super meta options, but just aren't really prepared for some of these things. So yeah, let me know if you got your 5, or if you got one that I feel like should have been in the top 5, but this was my 5, just because like I went with the ones that have results to back it up. Okay, so if it doesn't have results to back it up, I did not discuss it. But if it did and I missed it, let me know in the comment section below. But if you're interested in building a team and coaching for VGC Regulation D, sign up on the channel. You know, if you take a look at the video description, there's a link to join the channel with the tier 3 sub. If you look in the comments section, there is also a link to join the channel with the tier 3 sub. And we set up a one-on-one Discord call. We organize a meeting time to meet and discuss the team. We build the team together. I show you how to do all the EV spreads like I mentioned in this video. And then from there, we get you that team that you need to be able to be successful in Regulation D format. All right, that's going to be it for now, folks. We'll be back with another video in the next one. Peace out and have a good one.